Thank you all for joining us. Happy National Poetry Month. Such a privilege to be here in partnership with the Conroy Center, giving this reading and open mic with this group of poets that have given me so much joy during the pandemic when we started this group, the Moon and Sun Poets Workshop. It's every Sunday, and my name's Emily Davis-Fletcher. I'm a poet living in Beaufort, and many of us are here in Beaufort or the Low Country, though some are, we have a poet in Ireland and Georgia, so we're sort of all over the map a bit, but for the most part, we're a group of poets in the Low Country in the South. But yeah, thank you so much for being here, and I hope you'll enjoy this reading in celebration of National Poetry Month, and it'll inspire you out there on Facebook watching to write some poems or get in touch with us if you're interested in looking for a poetry group, a very supportive group of poets, dedicated writers. But yeah, to get started, each poet, there's 10 of us, and each poet will just introduce themselves and then read a few poems. And then at the end, hopefully, if any of you out there are on Facebook and want to, we're gonna have an open mic afterwards. If you want, you can quickly email me and I'll check my email if you want to sign up for the open mic at the end. My email is Emily, EMILYDFJ@gmail.com if you think you want to read the open mic. So without further ado, we're going to hear from Doris Wright.
Hi, I'm Doris Wright. I write mostly fiction, short stories, flash fiction, some nonfiction, and poetry. And I sort of put poetry aside for a while. And actually it was Emily and this group that inspired me to start writing poetry again. And it's a wonderful group of poets and very inspirational. And also, like during the pandemic and sequestering, I think it was something good to get going and start doing again. In fact, the poems I'm going to read, I think I'm within 5 minutes, but Emily will give me the hook if I go over. I know she said that. And they were all written during the pandemic, so that's why I chose them. So, shall I start, Emily?
Yeah, please do. And there's no hook, it's just
virtual hook, yeah. Stars. Oh, I do love them and have since on my back in the sand I saw them for the first time. Darker than it had ever been, far from the city's dazzle, it was love at first sighting. Quiet humility, radiant magnificence, peace and tranquility. I like to think they love me too. Note how wrapped in attention they are, seeing my grain of sand self. I do not know their names, their cosmos, nor do they know mine. It doesn't matter. They laugh at my pomposity and love me still, spinning brightness just for me, onto my small spot, onto my little me. They will wait, still, quiet, bright, just where they are. And next one is called Yellow Galoshes. I watched it, the steady, not gentle rain, plashing in the bird bath, bubbling water overflowing, like when brown thrasher bathes there with abandon. Now I badly wanted galoshes, yellow ones, to walk in the rain, leave my lair, jump fiercely into puddles, all up and down the street. Plop, whoosh, whack, plop, whoosh. Little yellow boots like tossed lemons, blurring in my stomps, sun rays in the sun. I would be transformed then, wet, young and happy, free and proud in my yellow galoshes. Behind their safe windows, the neighbors look. I see them shaking their heads. Perhaps they say, there she goes, disturbing the peace. Why not stay inside in cozy, dry slippers? I think they're jealous. They want yellow galoshes of their own. The next one's called Peace, and it's inspired by William Butler Yeats's The Lake Isle of Innisfree. I feel it dropping slow, sinking hot and still from the purple noon, spilling from the rush of wind made by linnet's wings. In its ebb and flow, it mingles with my sweat, tickling every pore. It settles on my skin and hair, but it will not go where I want it to, down to my self's core. Peace knows the truth. My heart is stony. It needs to be softened, readied the way I till, breaking clods with my hoe before I plant my first bean row. And this one is called Us. Side by side, we live and thrive, but won't end up that way, opting instead for ashes, dust to dust. Where will I go? I can see me tossed to the winds, blowing over a cliff into a ragged, stony sea. Can't you just feel the water spray in that rain streak moment? Can't you sense the drama, a maudlin movie trope? Will I sink deep, food for fishes, or float like flotsam to the world's edge and its glowing green flash? And will you come along? Oh, yes, I know you hate the water and don't know how to swim, but I'm afraid to be alone. So I'll accompany you. You may choose, even if our resting place is not so nice, even if our dust should mingle, sift, and blend in a cardboard box left in an old file drawer in the basement. Even then, my dear, I'll stay with you. Next one's called Nesting. Be careful where you build your nest, your home, daughter. Don't you choose a spindly tree as I did with my first. It cracked in the tempest, my brittle branches broke, my home and precious babes were tossed into the sea. I tried to save the deers, but fuzzy and feathered, all sodden and heavy, instead of flying to the sky, they sank like stones. How I wailed, not knowing others were yet to come. Lovely as my nest was, as much care as I took to build it sound and safe, it made no difference. What you must seek, my chick, is a firm foundation, a solid branch on a sturdy and steady oak. Make no romance with a fragile tree, because if you love its final flowers. It's called Letting Go. Those thugs, the moving men, with big paw hands and thundering walk, crashing, breaking, tossing willy-nilly my things, broke them. My mother's fine china cups, pink and peach, roses, gold trim, now without handles. Little Hummel boy with staff, looking for his sheep, has lost his head. There's more. A glimpse reminds me that box of other relics of my past, some shattered, some sound. What will you do, I ask myself, with those trappings of a gone life? They aren't your mother or your rosy, misremembered childhood. Once again, look away. But if I let them go and put them in the trash, send them on their way to live life in a landfill, would that piece of me, my mother, dwelling amidst the vilest refuse and odious odors, be nose poked by what wary rats wondering who we are? It's called Ode to a Doorknob. Oh, you glass sphere, you many-faceted rosy rosette, where's the rest of you? A glint of afternoon sun shows me you are a kaleidoscope. Is it a starflower you cradle, or a poinsettia perhaps? If I put you on the floor, will you spin like a dreidel, or do your many facets arrest your rotation? Just why are you so useless? Why do you and your irascible kin forever repel your spindles, then fall, roll, and render rooms into traps where a random resident calls out, Rescue me. Is being lovely enough for you? I have another one, but I'm not sure if there's enough time. Emily?
Yes, go ahead. Read your last poem.
Okay. All right.
Great, thank you.
Oh, skinflint. Your skin may look soft and lovely, but it's thicker than mine. Almost everyone's is. Mine is tissue paper thin, transparent, easily shred, not recyclable, even flushable, dissolves in moisture, flares fast in heat. You're among the lucky ones with skin of sturdy linen. Anger, barbs, or looks askance can't penetrate your fixed shield. That's why you'll go further, growing ever more resilient as I wither, lingering behind. Of course, it's not your fault. You were made of finer fabric, and the weaver kept you strong. Stitched, weakened seams, darn tears, sprayed you with the starch of approbation, so no doubt would dare seep in. While I am wrapped in fear, unable to move or act, you go ever forward, not seeing any danger, not stopping to wonder, should I or should I not? You go on your way to a multitude of winds. That's all. Thank you for letting me read and inspiring me. Thanks.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, like I'm so glad you went first. I know we did it out of necessity because you're going on a trip, but you're such a good ambassador for the group because I recognize so many of those wonderful poems that started as prompts in our group.
Yeah, I should have said that. I meant to say that.
No. I'm just, yeah, no. It's just really special for me to see that and like where these writing exercises, how far you went with them. So I'm just taking a little bit of credit for us at the group, but 99.9% of the credit goes to you because you kept working on those beginnings.
Started with the prompt, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Such a joy to see how far you went with them. So next we have Heather Kuntz.
Well, Heather Kuntz is my maiden name. I am now married and live in Charleston, South Carolina. And my name is Heather Johnson now. And I've always loved story, but more from a performing aspect. I grew up with a mother who's a puppeteer. And so I've performed and made puppets my whole life. And I love writing stories and short stories. And Emily and I are actually working on a screenplay together. And more recently, she has inspired me to write poetry. And I'm going to share one poem that I have written. And it came out of a workshop hosted by June and Emily together. They hosted a workshop. And I want to say thank you for inviting me to participate today. This is an honor. Okay, so my poem is titled, My Sensuality is Tired. Sensuality, I know you are tired. You need to be held and fed. You are too big to fit in my lap. But I have broad shoulders and long arms to cradle you from head to toe. Rocking back and forth, humming April in Paris. You fish your tiny fingers under the ribbed collar of my sweater and brush my skin, slowly, like windshield wipers during a gentle rain. For the moment, you are satiated and satisfied. You follow me back to bed, guided by the unmistakable hoot and happy trill of the horned owl. Sensuality? Are you still awake? Are you singing to me? My own lullaby to hear as every other living soul is asleep. You're not lulling me to sleep, but waking me up to a peace I did not know was there.
Oh, beautiful, Heather. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
I love how you personified sensuality as a child. It's so unusual, but when it works so well. And I just have to say, yeah, I'm sorry for forgetting about your husband. I've known you. We've known each other since we were 19. So Heather will always be 19, my best friend and soulmate, driving around Columbia, Missouri, when we were at Stevens College. No husband, no children. So yeah, Heather Johnson, everyone. Thank you. Next up, we have my dear friend Susanna, who is in Cork, Ireland.
Hi, everyone. My name is Susanna, and I'm glad to hear about puppets again, because me and Emily met in Cork, where I'm working as a puppeteer as well, and and she passed me a few jobs. So I've never wrote about poetry before. I only wrote about puppet monologues and puppet scripts. And it just happened that when the pandemic happened and all the shows were cancelled, I was chatting with Emily. She invited me to this wonderful group. These are some of the poems that came out of the prompts that we had to get, that we were giving each other. Okay, so the first one, it's called Summer Afternoons, and it's dedicated to my great auntie who passed away last year. My childhood is a small triangle of light, an enclosed wild garden where the nettle is high and the Judas tree looks back at you. I do not remember how many steps I needed to crawl to my great auntie's kitchen, but I can feel the roughness of the wood under my bare feet and hands, while her voice leads me upstairs. She's the captain of my boat, the loud voice who knows how to grow tomatoes with no water and when to harvest grapes without touching them. Her nose always into somebody else's business, and her shirt is bright white under the red lipstick. No ring on her fingers and no safety belt while she drives. I sit on her side, pulling the foam out of the hot plastic seat of the old Renault. A new chapter of the Odyssey is unfolding from her smoky lips while driving in the dry river in the summer afternoons. The car bounces and bumps while we laugh and scream, and the apricots fall from the basket in the back seat. We'll eat the dirt too. The femme fatale Circe was able to turn Ulysses into a pig after he refuses her love, him and his whole crew. I see Ulysses as a tall, hairy, beardy man with bad clothes and a sweet breath, like the fishermen we met at the beach where Ulysses faced Charybdis. A world of sirens, dark and untouched, is left unsung by the poets. Where are the women in the fairy tales when the male completes his quest? They're making fried aubergines and stuffed olives, and they will feast in my mouth. I lose my shoes. She buys me sandals, red little sandals that make my feet bleed. I keep them with me in the sleep. The next one is a poem that I wrote about my last almost romance before the lockdown last year. It's called The Half Night. I steal the cigarette from between your fingers for a puff, for the sake of flirting. I don't smoke either. The soft blanket on that white morning in my bedroom and the obstination of my dog's breath under the door. Did you really bring the stinky chicken roll in that bedroom? Plantago's heads are bumping on the plastic of my sandals, a snare drum announcing my feet. You're the last man I saw asleep, the last deep voice I laughed with when the drunk man fell asleep on his sandwich in Lennox. Those two pigeons we saw curled up in the cold night were balancing on a thick wire. How do they do that? Did they choose each other, or they just joined together for the sake of warmth? I don't close my eyes while nakedness surprises me, and I'm balancing my weight next to you, pondering the shades of your ginger hair, the cliche of meeting a musician one night. I love Mingus too, and wow, the story of the clown, that could be me, trying to keep the heights of our laughter so that I don't lose your undivided attention. I'm half awake on my wire and fear in the morning arriving too soon. I notice a polite stranger in my bed. I watch you brushing your teeth and gently folding your toothbrush in the cellophane. You do it as if you were holding a delicate flower, a dear picture from when you were a child. You're gone in the grey and cold Sunday morning, under a night that wanted more out of lovers, and a moon that was so small and clear to be plucked like a pea. Okay, so the third poem is a poem that generated from the prompt Try to Praise the Mutilated World by Adam Zagajewski. And it's called A Dilemma of Beauty. It's inspired by the horrible news that we receive weekly in Italy about all the migrants, all the people who are trying to flee their country and cross the Mediterranean Sea in terrible condition, and unfortunately they never make it. Scars in the chest get happy and high with a red fear of subverting my truth. Too much pain is not good. I lay a stage of white, thick cream pages for them, like the clean, bright sheet you change in the lovemaking bed. I refuse to write about them again. It's bad trade agreements don't write good lines. My aunties stopped cooking tuna pies in protest. Fishermen were ordered not to save lives at sea, under a drone controlled by the silky chairs in Denmark. We won't eat the people eaten by the fish forgotten by the people, they say. The fortress of Europe giving meals to the eels. Thousands of spots dance in the warm waves of the sea, with floating hands reaching for other floating hands like marionettes. Bodies cooked by the salt and trimmed by the sharks will not make the ink for your poetry prizes. I want to stop praising the mutilated world and make it whole again. A 14-year-old boy from Mali has been found, forever asleep, forever aspiring, with his junior cert results hidden in his jacket. A beautiful calligraphy makes curves and jumps on the page to land on tiny columns, where the Arabic can meet the French translation. Weaving the stories of resilience with the thorns in our hands, we play the drums much better after we heard them. How many beautiful words do we need to unpack to find the dead inside, hidden in the kernel of a fruit we don't know if it's right to bite or if it's wrong to waste? Okay, thank you very much for having me. It was a big pleasure. Thanks.
Wow, that was stunning, stunning. You always bring such vivid imagery and complex, deep emotional truths to our group. And as people here listening, they can hear that. And so thank you so much for sharing your work each week with us and now out here with the world. And I didn't say your last name, Susanna Trifiletti. So look her up and keep an eye out for her. She's going to be a big, big poet. And next up, we have another big poet, Jacquelyn Markham. Jackie, did you want to, there you go.
Here I am. Okay, since you sprung on me my bio, I'll just read a little bit from the back of this book and add on a few years. But I was born of Polish, English, and French Canadian ancestry in a small Michigan town that borders both the river and the shore of the Great Lake Michigan. I was one of 9 children and attended a one-room, this makes me feel real old, a one-room school in rural Michigan from kindergarten to 6th grade until my father was transferred with a space program to Huntsville, Alabama. And we all were in tow with 8 siblings and lots of pets. I'm a first-generation college graduate, received my PhD and my master's in creative writing from Florida State University and a Bachelor of Arts at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. I've been active in the grassroots women's movement in the 70s and 80s and 90s and 2000s and continue to be. And I've been a pioneer in women's studies, developing courses on university campuses and eventually online. And I've mentored countless writers of all ages in the community and university, including University of Georgia, Georgia Southern, Midway College. And in the last 10 years, I became a full professor. And I published a scholarly tome of about 500 pages of all of the poems that Charlotte Perkins Gilman published during her lifetime between 1894 and 1935. So that's what I've been busy doing. And I wanted to start, first I wanted to get out of the way so I don't forget, which I was about to, is some thanks and recognition. I want to thank again Jonathan Hutt and the Pat Conroy Center for continuing to support and promote poetry this month and all year, but certainly this month. Margaret Evans for publishing our poetry. In the latest edition, I have a poem, and of course she's been supportive of our poetry. And I want to also thank Emily Davis-Fletcher, of course, the diva of the Sun and Moon Poets, for organizing that and contacting Margaret. So there's my thanks and recognition I do appreciate. It wasn't always this way. We didn't always have this kind of support for poetry, so it's been really wonderful. And I want to start with a poem that is very significant to me right now because as Emily well knows, because she was helping me unpack some curios last night, but I have my title poem of my first collection was called China Baby. And here's the little China baby in a peanut shell tied with a ribbon that belonged to my grandmother. And when I first went to Florida State University and was working on my first collection, which is called China Baby, my mother had passed away, and I was taking the approach of exploring my heritage through my poetry. So this is kind of a poem that represents that to me, and that matrilineal connection to my Polish ancestors. And that's what the China Baby's about. And I just got her back into my china cabinet from the storage unit after 6 years. China Baby. The rotten egg smell of paper mills excited me. Manistee and Grandma's house. After Grandma's marshmallow skin hug came the China Baby in a peanut shell tied with a ribbon, untouchable in the china cabinet till Grandma brought it down. In later years, I remember her in a dining room spread with yellow light, oak table piled with newspapers, postcards, and anything too good to throw away. She said rosaries and read Polish prayers, Piesny Postna, for the poor. I heard when she was young, she washed and stretched other people's lace curtains, ironed organdy dresses for children not her own, and stemmed black cherries at the canning factory. No one talked about what happened to Grandpa, who left her and 6 children without a word. She must have searched in every stranger's face for the features in that oval portrait hanging in the closed-off room upstairs. They sold her house to pay the bills of dying, belongings sorted like a tug of war. Mother said, what's the use? After Grandma's routine caretaking, no one puts flowers on her grave. Now the China Baby is in my china cabinet, and my sister's child peeks in with envious eyes. Next, I'm going to read the poem that was published in the Low Country Weekly And of course, in the Low Country, we're a bit past the quickening, which I think to be in about February and March, and we're pretty much in full bloom. But I think in other parts of the country who are still getting snow, certainly, and the world, it works. It's called quickening. Quickening, amid the roots, unraveling in a musky dance of darkness, pushing through brown earth, weaving round the milky quartz and granite, wrapped in loam and clay, gems and flowering a mystery, beaded burnt sienna buds, dotted fragile twigs of bridal wreath, green shoots escape swampy earth, proof the force below. Quickening, within the womb, my sister's child, still nourished by her mother's mysterious blood waters, stretches curled arms and legs, reaching for a light yet unknown to her. Unfurled limbs, her unheard cry now ripples in May to break the silence as morning glories cry color in the passing night. Quickening, a flicker in my dark cave soul. Oh, let the spirit rise, my own azaleas, blazing coral in the golden honey sun. And to bring this up to date, thank you. A little bit this, and I want to give a shout out to Elizabeth Robin, poet, who is also curating poetry for a magazine out of Hilton Head called Local Life, Hilton Head and Bluffton, I'm not sure exactly where. And this is a poem that she asked me to submit for the May edition, and it's called Resurrection. It has an epigraph by H.D. Hilda Doolittle, modern American poet, who's my favorite. Resurrection, direction is resurrection, H.D. Sun rises liquid gold, clouds split cerulean sky, colorful cockle shells swirl the surf, tap my ankles, scatter and return. I catch one, touch ridges of the spiral, turning, twisting inward, fingertips follow sea's vibration, the high tide and the low. Clairaudient, I listen for the spell, the secret, the depth of my desire, the direction. Bat in a cave knowing where the wall, where the opening, the way a salmon knows to swim upstream, and the robin where the worm in silent earth. Dolphin's language rises to the surface, sends me signals to follow home, to sea, to moon, to pole of the tides. I know direction, prayers answered, prayers given. Thank you. I thought I would finish up with one poem that was picked up by the South Carolina Poets Archive for poetry published after 2005. And this poem was originally published in the Appalachian Quarterly out of Shepherdsville, West Virginia. And it's called Excavation. And this one has an epigraph by Mary Oliver. And there was a new voice that you slowly recognized as your own, Mary Oliver. Deep, hard work, no backhoe to help, a trowel, sometimes a teaspoonful at a time. The work is tedious, impossible, separating earth from poppy seeds, light years slow, task without end. I ask myself, am I scratching the surface? I fear years of Pollyanna-itis have finally conquered the digging an empty ritual. Still, I persevere. I want to see my face looking back at me, afloat in a black water pool. I want to hear my own words, the words before language, the words of the volcano before it erupts, lava before it flows to black ash, the sounds of the clear water circling the earth's interior, the language the whales use in their journey up and under. I excavate for what seems an eternity, not even a teaspoon, one grain, one poppy seed at a time. Nothing happens. One day, when I've given up the spoon, the trowel, the despair, I find myself breathing the dark earth as if it were air. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you all.
Thank you so much. As always, it's like such a pleasure to hear you read and absorb like just what a goddess of poetry you are. It's like, oh, if we can't have Carolyn Forsythe here, well, we've got Jackie Markham, so there's no loss.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Emily.
Yeah, thank you. Next up, June Labazon.
Hi, everybody. My name is June Labazon, and when I first moved here to Beaufort from Hoboken in 2012, I took a writing class with Catherine Tandy Brown and kept asking, well, where are the poets? Where are the poets? I could only find writers. And lo and behold, about 5 years later, I ran into Susan first. I kept running into Susan. Susan and I were meant to meet each other because I met her at Belk's, and then I kept meeting her on the street. And finally, we wound up in workshops together. And then I met Emily. And this year has actually been the highlight of my life. I want to thank Jonathan and the Pat Conroy Center for always having workshops for us to attend in poetry. And I guess the highlight of this whole pandemic was the workshop that Emily and I were able to give together, where I could be a little bad and let my sensual self come to the surface. And that was a whole lot of fun. No, I'm not reading any sensual poetry today. I like to say that every moment of my life is a poem waiting to dance on the page. So I went back through some of my old work and picked out some poems that highlight some of my favorite moments. This one is called As Long as I Have a Dollar. Walking into a local Japanese restaurant, music barely audible, you look at me and say, it bothers me when ethnic restaurants don't play music of their own ethnicity. I mention a few others whose music themes match their menus. You say, that's because they don't know what they want to be. And I smile, not thinking of restaurants or music at all. My Uncle Pepe used to say, as long as I have $1 in my pocket, I will eat a hot meal. That was during a time when restaurants didn't play music, at least not the diners and greasy spoons who would take my uncle's dollar. They knew what they were, didn't want to be anything else. We'd spend our quarters buying Sabret hot dogs from the hot dog wagon. They were loaded with mustard and those tomato-lathered onions you can only get in the Northeast. Washing them down with orange knee-high, we'd walk up to the burger line and wait outside for my uncle to finish his hot meal. Pressing our noses against the rain-spotted windows, we'd tap on the glass, trying to get his attention. There he'd be, sitting in a glitzy red booth, the dollar spread out neatly in front of a cup of coffee. He'd throw a quarter in the jukebox, 10 selections for 25 cents. We'd press our ears closer to hear, music of his own choosing. The waitress would slide an overflowing mess of gravy and meatloaf in front of him, a hot meal that anchored him to the sofa for the rest of the day and night. I tell you this story as the Turkish music drowns out the sucking sounds of udon noodles between our lips. You look into my eyes and repeat, it really bothers me when ethnic restaurants don't play music of their own ethnicity. I reach out, touch your hand, playfully slipping a quarter between your fingers. You don't understand the touch of my hand. It doesn't mean anything to you anymore. You pull away, look in another direction. Somehow I know you aren't talking about music at all. Moonchild. Now, this may sound, the language in this may sound a little awkward because I play sometimes and I put some of my poems through a translation tool. So this has gone through several different translation tools, so the language might be awkward. Moonchild, hidden in the night of sheets, I failed to rise. Names emerge, not of my being. I no longer feel able to answer that bestowed upon me at birth. The fit is loose. I know a thing or two about reputation. A name tells it all. Time refined, the Junie fades to June, to the middle of the middle name. Linda becomes Linda with a Y, and I settle on June Linda. Most of this is just ego anyway. No need to explain my calling. My emotions are packed in all the right containers. A preoccupation with egotism leads me to yoga classes, weekly facials, pedicures and manicures. Wrapped in seaweed, pungent and raw, I lie still, clutching the transparent soft breezes of lust. On this quiet linen pre-dawn, the familiar grows sublime once again. Junie has a strange hold, expands my confidence. The light of the moon, perpetrating the lace-veiled window, releases the real me. Shimmering, I escalate to levels of self-abduction and bask in the gaudy spectrum of colors generated by my ability to gratify my own yearnings. The girl, once dead, inside of me is embraced by my desire, a star on the rise, Junie Moon Day. And I love the ocean. I don't swim, but I absolutely adore the ocean. So this is Ode to the Ocean. O silver cerulean, watery ruler, I know the visible benefits of your force. Still, admiration breeds ignorance. My arms wrapped around my legs, I slouch lazily a good distance from your energy. Charmed by your magnificence, reeling at your scent, I dare not come to the edge. You swell head feet, making high points with your thundering symphony. The structural desires of bells combine with your tide flow, better left unheard. The music rises with the tales of fear and power in my head, stories and music fornicating on the pure white sand. My feet luxuriate in its graininess. I am squeamish about your potential for violence. I view the exquisite corpse on your shores, a screaming merman, a fearsome monk fish, a bloody cat fish. You spare no effort, wash them over and over again with your greed. Their natural passion breeds your good time. The digital darkness of night overcomes us. You are stretched to the horizon. Your chorus chants participate in my undersea delights. It is illogically possible. I wish to remain an outsider, yet I can't continue to behave as though there is no attraction. I move closer. Your large white peaked arms reach out to me. Scale it, jump it, pull the ropes. You draw me closer with your mockery. The invisible line between you and the shore is no match for your might, no match for my trepidation. I am your secret catch. I reason that my head has been too long in the sand pile. I must stretch my mind to its original dimensions, overcome apprehension, surrender to your splendor. My big toe starts the absurd journey into the liberated zone of your midnight coolness. A rest of defense mechanism quietly takes place. The water beads on my skin. My mind tells me to push for safety, yet it's a bit too late to recover the acquisition of my faculties. O silver, cerulean, watery ruler, I praise the vintage benefits of your force. And I have one last one that I wrote for my niece, and I hope she's listening because I wrote this a very long time ago for her. Back in the day, Jacquelyn and I posture on the wooden floor of the playset treehouse, a huddle of arms and legs entwined in a cradle of remembrances, myths spied in the mirrors of who we are yet to be. Mommy said that back in the day, the peaches were so sweet, the juice would squirt and dripping down her arms and legs. Her 9-year-old wisdom is acquired from a storehouse of monisms. We wince as we take bites of the mustard-colored peaches in our hands. They are dry, tart, hard. I too recall the sweetness, savor the sugar on my tongue. My memories spin into wings. We wiggle our tongues at each other, a marriage of mischief and fun. Giggling, we fling the sour pieces of fruit over the edge. They explode into midair, painting the stone wall cantaloupe before it hits the ground. Our pupils widen, fixated on the deep orange pool beneath us. The world is awash in stuff eyes alone will never see. Thank you so much. It was an honor to be able to read.
Thank you, June. Oh my gosh, a star on the rise indeed. That's
And I
beautiful.
did sneak a little sensual poem in there. I don't know if you caught it, but I snuck one in.
It was like all sensual. I was like, what is she talking about? She didn't bring anything sensual to the table. And it was a feast of sensuality. And I just have to apologize the way I introduced you was like that teacher in Ferris Bueller, like June. I just totally was not worthy of what a fantastic poet you are. So I apologize. And
Thank you so much. It was an honor to read.
that's just my nerves. So thank you. And now we have Andrew Bellacomo is going to read, and he is the most handsome member of our group, the most sensitive, surprisingly. He's the male, but he's probably the most sensitive and the most charming member of our group. And that's sort of his curse to bear in life, people, these things, charming, handsome, sensitive. So while we all feel bad for him, at the same time, it's a joy to have him in our group and to hear his work. So thank you.
That's so kind, Emily. Thank you. I'm gathering a lot of inspiration hearing everybody read today, and I've been really grateful to have been a part of the Sun and the Moon poetry group this year. It's been a really bright spot in my year. It's allowed me to really explore poetry in a way that I have not explored it previously. I'm relatively new to it. I'm probably more comfortable with prose, but it's been a wonderful exploration. I live in Albany, Georgia, which is in Southwest Georgia, and I work in video production. I was drawn to that job because of an interest in filmmaking. And I draw a lot of inspiration from history and from the natural world. And so the first poem that I have to read here today is called Ephemeral. And the idea of that kind of came from, in ecology, there's something called ephemeral wetlands, which is when kind of water pools in a certain area temporarily and then is absorbed back into the water cycle. And I thought it'd be an interesting comparison, the human life or life in general, sort of being compared with this sort of water cycle. So the first one here is called Ephemeral. We are ephemeral, like the glass pearls of the rain that melt together and transform their world and are absorbed again into the rough and buckled breast of the earth, or rise as vapor hanging silent in the air. Like the brief candle, we are out in an instant, and in our place the wild cycle continues with not a memory of this short reverie. Impossibly beautiful, impossible to recreate. A divine, fleeting mystery like a shooting star, an iridescent pulse in the velvet black ocean of the sky, existing only for one brilliant, brave, enigmatic moment. Blink and you'll miss the miracle. What can we do with such a sacred gift? Except taste the sweetness in every breath and sing with the crimson honeysuckle as it climbs the fence in the last days of spring. Forgive yourself for every wrong and let love in like a river, wild and winding and deep and strong. Let the pot boil over. Open the windows and listen to the rain. And then, thank you. And then I'll read, I think, this one more, which is one of the earliest poems I wrote, probably about 4 years ago. And it's just a little bit of an anthem to writers called the Bandits of Experience. We are the bandits of experience, the desperados of moments both dark and bright, of times that shock or comfort or light the eyes of those who hear our stories, wicked and weird and bright with glory. For where others may cry and toil and fight, we steal away coolly into the night and spin tales of danger and love and fright. We are the ones who write. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to read today. This has been a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks so much. And now we have Jayne Forsythe, who is also extremely charming and handsomely beautiful and sensitive and an amazing yoga teacher and a very, very dedicated writer. So I've been very pleased to be on this journey with her as she's giving poetry, more and more of her attention and focus in life, coming to our group every week. So thank you, Jayne.
Thank you, Emily, and thanks everyone for being in this gathering this afternoon. Yeah, Emily and I have known each other as we've studied and practiced yoga together. And of course, that stopped, went Zoom, last year. And as I was casting around, looking for things to do in my Zoomdom, I discovered that Emily was going to be offering a poetry workshop. And I thought, well, why not? Having no idea just how engaging and, and how much fun this could be, although intimidating. So I have to say to Emily, I really thank you for encouraging me to see as a poet, and to the Moon and Sun poetry group for encouraging me in this, nascent path that I'm on. And so I'm going to share a few poems. Thank you for indulging me. The first poem that I'm going to read is called Reading Tea Leaves. A chuckwill's widow sounds and an avian alarm in my mind-darkened dream space. Rising at his call, I stare at the cresting fan of sunrise, dappling Lucy Creek in pastel hues, smiling in dawning joy. Grandest Grandma, in childlike script, floats across my mug from Graham. Heart song hopes for wonder to script his life. Spooning the tea harvest of Mexico's Moringa Madres from the blue and white stroopwafel tin, I pray for their continued safety. Leaves sizzle the boiling water, releasing an amber essence of wood and lemongrass. Savoring this beginning ritual, today the paper can wait. The next poem is called Lucy Creek After the Storm. Oh, look, awe animating Barney's eyes, and my gaze leaves the TV drama of a godless ideology that is strip mining generations of love, and it follows his excitement. Outsized clouds swag over marsh, shimmering with ancient sunlight, capturing us in pepper-scented NIMBY, lemon-flavored Spartina, and pluff mud, sighing over misty tidal waters. Yardside, our twin souls twine, captive in this frescoed, domed cathedral of God's flames, piercing well into our handheld hearts, harboring joy. Oh, how we look. And this last poem is called Found in Storm King Mountain. And I have to thank June and Emily in their workshop. This came from a prompt that I've been following through from their workshop. The ascent is a cairn-steep, crag-strewn, boulder-filled, giant hip-bending trek left in glacial retreat. We question our audacity. 12 hands fill pocket crevices, as we lift our collective indulgences with pulsing lungs, our audacity confirmed. Each exhale joins the highland winds, carrying an autumn tweed of fiery leaves. Urged on in wonder, I crest the summit, searching the river-split ancient valley, worthy of a Frederick Church panorama. And I find bird songs cease, wind shuffles calm, rock chairs pillow, heartbeats silence. Wrapping its solitary abyss around me, my throne of stone stirs something deep inside. I am mountain. Thanks.
Thank you, Jayne. Oh my gosh. And I hope you are calling yourself a poet, because you absolutely are. So I love being on this journey with you and hearing all of the new work you're creating. So thank you so much. Beautiful. And our next poet, she knows she's a poet, which is what I feel one of the most important things that a poet has to be able to do is call themselves a poet. And this lady, this woman definitely knows she is. She knows she's a poem as well as a poet. And we have Susan Madison up to read now.
Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well this evening. Thank you, Emily. I am one of the newer poets with the Moon and Sun group. And even though I have only met with them for about 3 meetings, I could tell you that my ability to create was becoming larger and more expansive because of it. And I absolutely love Emily and your spirit, Emily. You know, there's something special about you that draws out the creativity in people, and I really appreciate that. You know, the Pat Conroy Foundation kind of got my poem writing back on track, I think about 4 or 5 years ago. Jonathan called me and asked me to read for I think one of their first poetry recitals. And that opened the door, not only opened the door of me remembering that I was a poet, but it also opened the door of a lot of emotions that continue to come up. And if I could say one thing that my poetry tries to personify or record, is the flow of emotions and observations. My first poem, and I read this before and I'm working on it, and it's evolving, and the name is Ugly Now. My poetry is ugly now, wretched, disfigured, ugly now. The kind of ugly it can only turn to beauty now. It examines sewage for proverbs. It's the place between George Floyd's neck and the cop's knee that knelt there now. Eavesdrops at the dinner tables where folk teach children how to hate now. Irreverent of religion and rules, it walks and talks to Jesus, has tea with Rumi, uses mudras to flow, and meditates with Buddhas now. It doesn't look to soothe feelings now, has the click, click, fuck you walk heels on concrete now, denies its mother's food and water now, and uses lovers contemptuously now. Partial to thugs who are crack babies, adores whores, has dinners with the homeless, and interview dying dope dealers now. It vomits up poison to prevent from dying now. Only fears being muted now. My poetry is unapologetically ugly now. The next poem that I'm going to read, and I try to balance out what I do, leave people with a little bit more of, up feeling and flow. And I wrote this years ago, and it's actually in I Can't Sing the Blues. This was made possible by the Beaufort Arts Council, and I can't say how important it is when we have money funded through local channels, what that means to us. The name of this one is The Dancer, and again, something that I've been working on revising, and it is evolving. And I always say on its own. When I experience something that I think is good, is at those moments that I know that it wasn't of me. I believe that everything flows from the outside in and through me, and I just honor it. And I've started honoring it because, quite frankly, at this point, I'm afraid not to honor it. So when I see something on paper after I wrote it, I'm able to say, damn, this is good. Not because I'm egotistical, which I am, but not because I'm egotistical, but because I understand everything creative comes from God through us. And the name of this one is The Dancer. And I wrote this one morning. It flowed through me when I found out a close friend of mine died. I see you South Shore in Motown, swishing as smooth as leaves floating to the ground. Your pointed toe shoes making love to the floor, bopping as smooth as Ellington play, Simone moaned and Smokey did love. You are a silhouette in the shadow box of my mind this morning as you pass from here and dance to somewhere my imagination cannot see. I see your half moon turns, your legs, fluid motions. Your moves are a video in my head, coming to me in bits and snatches. Your head rocks from side to side, bobbing like a boat on gentle waves. Memories of you have faded now from the years we have not hung out together. Yet, with open eyes I see your shadow following the flow of your moves, the floor releasing its hardness to you. You step so lightly, becoming one with a saxophone's cry, your gentleman's bow, your ebb and flow, your dancer's soul. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Oh my gosh, very powerful, powerful work. Thank you. Such a brave writer. And another very brave poet we're going to hear from is Robin Dare. And Robin's work always astounds me for how authentic and brave she is in her writing, and she can go really surreal. We have a surrealist here among us. Oh, Robin, just unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm Robin Dare. Just want to thank Emily for encouraging me this past year, being a part of this group. It's been wonderful. As everyone else with the pandemic, being isolated, can be tough sometimes, although I live on a boat full time. So I'm isolated anyway. But just to say, I am in Elizabeth City, North Carolina right now. We have traveled almost 800 miles by water. And tomorrow we're going to go through the Dismal Swamp. So looking forward to that. That should be quite an adventure. I write mostly prose poems. The poem I'm going to read is a long prose poem, so it'll be one poem, but it's a little long. But it's probably one of my favorite things that I've ever wrote. It was in my book of poems, which I published in prose poems, which I published in 2006 in Transponder, which is the name of the book. So this is called Snippets to Hell. Mrs. Pride desires removal from the 7 list. She doesn't know how to get rid of her feelings of accomplishment. Damn it. She is proud of the pride of lions she keeps as pets. After all, the mere gathering of multitudes of wild things referred to as a pride must mean something. Proud of her pride, indeed she is, proud when they rip flesh like a manuscript without a spine, a paginated tingling evisceration, proud that lions move from their spirit and rarely wait for inspiration. That's a herd killer every time. People wave at each other, vying for attention, a wink of recognition, a pittance of validation. What's wrong with being happy with you? It's quite divine. The group mentality in all its ramification leaves her panting, withering smartly in the lion's den. Mr. Avarice steps up to his turn in line. Today they are handing out shit on a shingle, some gray liquid mess of flesh accompanied by a little rice looking a lot like maggots. It's served by the twins. The twins have a couple of missing digits between them. Their hands are vein-filled and plump. The distraction of missing pinkies seems pleasurable at this moment, a diversion from what this greedy man can barely on a good day overcome. He tries hard not to stare at the scalpeled flesh where the smallest fingers should be. One twin hands the other twin the plate as the day's concoction sloshes on the dingy dish. The second twin slides it across the glass counter toward the stingy man. They didn't need their pinkies to accomplish this task. Yet in his overwhelming avidity, Mr. Avarice thinks how desperately he wants them to possess those tiny, fragile endings on their hands. Miss Envy spots the pocketbook sitting up perky on the bar. It's a purse in the shape of a bustier. The little boobs are rounded with a hint of firmness that belies a young girl of 14 or 15. Miss Envy thinks, of course, they're sculpted after a young woman. It's without a doubt a virgin purse. She wants to engage the owner of the sparkly jewel tote. The purse owner adjusts her own bustier several times. She glances down at her boobs, making sure they align just so, and that her cleavage plunges evenly. Miss Envy is not remotely on the dainty handbag owner's radar. In fact, Miss Envy is much too large and clunky to ever think of owning a little happy breast accessory such as the one displayed on the counter. Nonetheless, Miss Envy wants to touch the owner on the shoulder and tell her she loves her purse. The purse waits to be picked up. Miss Envy reaches for her glass of beer and gives one of the nubile purse boobs a defiant squeeze. One decadent bauble falls squarely into Miss Envy's sweaty palm as if to offer a consolation prize. Mr. Anger never sees straight anyway. In his head, a slight variation on that thought reminds him of the British reference to act without haste. We're expected in Hyde Park straight away. Things have a cockeyed way of presenting themselves in his mind. Once he thought he felt the nub of a tail growing from his coccyx. It all began because everyone he came in contact with said he should put the past behind him. The nub started as a minor irritation, progressing to an incessant itch. In the end, he thought he could feel the tingle of protuberance. It reminded him of a cold sore on his lip. He notices wrath festering in the outside world, belching forth around him. He could see the onset of a slow roiling boil about to come to a head. Miss Lust pretends not to know her own lusciousness. She repeats to herself, the sin in you is the sin in me, or 7 times 7 is the number. Miss loves to repeat the times table when her image appears in the mirror. Numbers certainly control the outcome of their actions. No telling what outcome will occur when her lascivious notions take to dividing her obvious attributes. She has a notion that she is attracted to herself. After all, she knows each shaded crevice, each knobby mole, and every loose, impatient end that longs for itself. Prince Gluttony gives and takes as he sees fit. He emulates the lovely Marie Antoinette. Let them eat cake, she said. He says, let them become gorged like the ancient Romans and vomit for personal pleasure. The prince does not want to eat any more cake. His teeth tingle from sugar. Instead, he points at the masses and bellows the names of cakes through a megaphone. Black Forest, Angel Food, Red Velvet, Devil's Food, Lady Baltimore, and Baked Alaska. The proclamations give the commoners, the proclamations drive the commoners into a sweaty frenzy. The prince offers his clean, concise enunciations instead of the actual desserts. He's thinking these peasants are poor anyway. A little recital of the finer foods couldn't hurt amidst their hunger pains. And last, Mr. Sloth. Mr. Sloth develops pains in his ankles and his wrists. His joints swell in protest before the first step forward, a goal or a destination. Pleasure comes from his position with the legendary Vegetation Management Company. His job allows him many motionless hours in the branches of stately oaks and prickly pines. Although he is afraid of heights, he finds a sturdy, thick limb, hooks his legs, and sways when there is a breeze. He studies his namesake's peculiarities, eats only leaves, swims without effort, but can't walk a step. Hair grows from stomach to back. Most of all, he adores the blue-green algae camouflage growing on their hair. Mr. Sloth's joints don't hurt up here in all the still canopy. In fact, Mr. Sloth's main goal is to spend a week hanging upside down, only to descend for necessary bodily functions and a chance to drag his body across the ground with an overarm stroke of quick genius. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. And, you know, it really, a virgin purse, like you took us to so many new places. I was like, I really want to read that, but yeah. Did I say surreal? That was wonderful. Yeah. I love the surreal, and I love the surreal in your work. Definitely a satire. For a while I was like, she wrote that after, like that came before our group. So she's not doing a parody of our group, is she?
Oh no.
I was trying to figure out who am I in that bunch, and who's Jackie, but then I was like, oh, that came before. So, but
Yes,
yeah,
it came before.
Yeah, way before you knew us, but amazing, really amazing. Very deep, but whimsical. So, and that's what I love about your work.
Thank you, Emily.
Yeah, thank you. All right, and now we've come to me, and then I'll read 3 poems, and then we'll open it up to the open mic. I know we have Brooke McKinney on the open mic and Theresa White. Okay. So I'm going to be doing an MFA in the fall, and I have a bachelor's in creative writing. So I feel like I've been a poet for a long time, at least born a poet, but calling myself a poet probably now for like 10 years or so. And definitely it's amazing to have these opportunities and have a group like Moon and Sun's Poets, because it's just a constant reaffirmation of like, yeah, I'm a poet. I'm doing this. This is my life's work. This makes me happy. This fuels my, my soul and my heart. So, and it's why I'm going to do an MFA. So thank you all for changing my life, because you're, and Jonathan, thank you so much for all the opportunities you've given me to grow as a writer. You're also a big reason I'm doing the MFA. I'm giving more of my life to my writing. So thank you all. All right, this poem is titled My Half of Night. I listened to crickets, saw night like a lock on a box of secrets. On my right, books spread out in bed, their corners curling. I want to call you, discover where your toes point now. A blue notebook touts 5 subjects in place of your head tossing on the pillow. I asked what you were thinking once, feeling your heart slow to a circling hawk. You'll never get inside my head, you said. There's some poetry, self-help, feathered light in solid colors. a dictionary from 1971, reminds me of pedantic, the meaning I learned back at your bedsit a few hours after we met, a squiggle of tobacco on your bottom lip, hard cider on my breath. Old friend from far away is open, prompting me to write about my history with nuts. Oil from my hands leaves permanent shadows on pages, not like your body with my cuts on bone. Wherever you are, your half of night is sawn by jagged breathing. If you sleep on your good ear, we'll hear nothing when the lock breaks. And this next poem is hopefully a little silly, going back to 7th grade lust. This is maybe Miss Lust in 7th grade. It's called Sex in Ancient 7th Grade. Lights out and my knee kisses your knee, not so accidentally whenever we sit cross-legged on the floor. But now you and the other boys sprawl out like scissors on a rug in math. I'm stuck in history, boxed in by the soft points of girls. In separate worlds, you and I look up at identical screens that turn pale with a wonder, not unlike the inner maze of a pyramid, if made of marshmallow and underwater. Up or down, our eyes follow a microscopic lens, wearing a miner's hat, as minutes stretch like miles. I forget what I should watch and glare with Nefertiti at the shaky outline of your paper sarcophagus. You wouldn't lie still, jerk to grab any female ankle within reach as I trace the inside of your thigh. A white burst of fireworks, laughter breaks through the wall. In my head, you yell, "There she blows." Sperm, says a man's voice, but we cannot see the penis. Tiny horse spirits race until stalled by static. The school nurse smacks the TV to behave. Once you lay too close to an anthill, and my gaze let its black parade up your leg. More minutes and miles to come to a burned out sun. The egg. I already know that the first to the center wins, but why do they bite and bite and bite for the egg to eat them whole? Why did you close your eyes when I stepped over your head? Lights on and my eyes sting from the TV's vision. Too limited, too late. Like an owl pellet I've been forced to study, tweeze fur and bones from, reconstruct the mouse. I know older ways to catch a live one. I know truer ways to touch you. Even now, you wear a khaki explorer's hat, feel along the grainy walls that glow from your torch. The brontosaurus scar on your thumb eclipses gods in profile, who prefer to be seen looking away as your flame trembles to my deepest chamber and is snuffed out by a greater brilliance. Blinded, you keep searching. Glide your fingertips down the gold current of my nose, my neck, and read that I am not this body. In radiance, you stumble, shatter the head of a jackal that seals a jar. Reaching in, you cut your hand on my heart. Later at my desk, I sit in front of you and double cross my legs. Who did it? Our teacher demands, holding a drawing that was folded 6 times and passed behind her back. Its sky is creased, not clear like textbook smooth pages. The Egyptians is your smart answer. I want to say something true. Someone's uncle must have come home crying about plastic bags circling the Sphinx like vultures when my uncle came home crying about AIDS. But I don't. The map's long crack of the Nile reminds me that the pad between my legs could overflow. So I raise my hand, ask a question. How can I show you my skin still tingles from your ant bites? In the bathroom, I wrap a drop of my blood in toilet paper to leave on your empty chair. Okay, and this last poem I'll read is titled Turning 30. So it was written like 7 years ago, but I don't know, I was looking at it today and I was thinking, gosh, this could be a post-pandemic poem. Turning 30. Now you blame no one and nothing, not heat ringing your body, not the crystal ball revealed in your mother's lung, not the caged mutt, salivating for coming rain like blood, not the cicada's sex rattle, or the trees dressed for hangings, not the man who grabbed your thighs to pull you from an angel oak, not stories of ghosts and first loves, rising over the exhaust of hearses corralled out back, as gray dawn blows out shadows of leaves across his wood, not the skin you left behind, still feeling for the first time, you own every move, ripe with loss, as you outlive another death. Okay. Thank you.
Emily, I'm going to have to run now, but I'll watch the rest on, I'll catch it on Facebook if it's up on that. So, but thank
Okay.
you all for your beautiful words. I really enjoyed it. And thank you for allowing me to join.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a great trip.
Oh, thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
And now we'll move into our open mic portion. We have 2 readers. Theresa White, would you like to read? And if you could just say a few words about yourself, and then if you want to read 1 or 2 poems, that would be great. Make sure to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. My name is Theresa White. I am a freelance writer and editor and a former congressional aide. I am a transplant from Savannah, Georgia, who moved here in the 1990s to live on ancestral land that's been owned by my fellow relatives here since the 1860s. I also was a journalist who worked at the Beaufort Gazette and WJWJ-TV, and I'm founder of the Pan-African Family Empowerment and Land Preservation Network, which helps Gullah Geechee families save their ancestral land from being lost to delinquent tax sales, among other means. The poems that I'm going to read today is from a collection that I wrote when I was a college student, and it's called The Diary of a Raped Woman. If you love me, let me go home to die. Is the title of this one. If you love me, let me go home to die. My soul cannot rest here where the people's stares are colder than the snow, where there is no smell of collard greens and cornbread on Sundays, or peach blossoms in spring, or moss hanging from oak trees to shade my grave. This poem is called Why I Don't Write Love Poems. I'm almost embarrassed to read it, but I'm going to read it anyway. It was inspired by a good friend of mine, but I won't tell her name. I cannot write love poems about missing you so much that my world turns misty blue. There is no joy in washing funky underwear for a man who doesn't care if my world is drowning in free rooms. And yes, love chokes on rice when I want potatoes. Your friends, not mine, impose on the time that you should be with me until I beat my wings against the gilded cage, longing to be free. There is no pleasure in scheduled lovemaking, once before 1 and again before 8, so you won't be late to your job, your all important job that makes you master and me slave to a passion for strange young men I meet on the street who take me out to eat in exotic places. Your body has grown wasteless from too much drinking and eating meals between meals. You have become a weight on my mind. There can be no doubt of what this poem is all about, which is why I don't write love poems. That's it. And thank you for the opportunity to read today.
Oh, thank you. That was really powerful. I hope you'll, consider checking out our group on Sundays. So. And now we have the amazing, talented Brooke Mckinney who's gonna grace us with some poems. So just introduce yourself, Brooke, and read us your beautiful work. I'm sorry, you don't feel like reading? I'm sorry, I don't know why I thought maybe you're gonna read under the mic. I understand. I'm sorry. But yeah, thank you all for being here with us and celebrating National Poetry Month. And thank you so much to Jonathan and the Pat Conroy Center, Brooke, everyone involved with that center for all they've done to create just a really robust, vibrant community of poets that, as you can see, poets in Ireland, poets in Georgia want to be a part of our community because it is such a strong, supportive community. So thank you all. And if anyone, we're gonna log off now from Facebook, but if anyone wants to stay on for a few minutes just to chat, and I'd love to do that. So
Thank you again, everyone. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Emily.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks,
It was
Emily.
Thank
Yeah.
you all.
good to participate.
I love being in our group because of you all.